Hey there. My name is sjofors. I know it's a little weird name, but it makes perfect sense in my native Sweden. And a little difficult though here for the United States. Maybe it's easier to remember me as the Price Whisperer. The Price Whisperer is a moniker that I didn't invent myself. I was called the Price Whisperer so many times that eventually I decided to adopt a moniker, and here I am. So today I'm going to talk about the importance of pricing for different departments within a company, and I'm going to start with finance. Well, finance is kind of interesting because first of all, finance typically work a lot with understanding and controlling the cost of a company, making sure that the company always have the cash that it needs, that it is making its margins, that it is profitable, and if it is not profitable, it find ways to add cash to the company in one way or another, so that the operations can continue. Finance is also acutely aware of the importance of price, because they look at the top line. For any company, it's very easy. You know, the resulting profits of a company comes from only three variables. It is whatever the cost happened to be, whatever the sales level happened to be, and whatever the price of whatever you sell happened to be. And only those three variables affects what profitability there is in a company. And of course, you have to be profitable. If you're not profitable, eventually you will run out of cash, whether it's cash from cash flow or cash from investors. And at that time you either sell your company or the company dies, you know, which is probably not a result that any of us want. Anyway, so finance is acutely aware of the importance of price, but at least in my conversations with CFOs of a wide variety of different companies and different sizes and all sorts of things, I get the sense that they're not as they don't have finance doesn't really have the understanding that pricing really is something you can work with proactively, and that taking a holistic view on a company and its pricing pricing can be really a profit driver if you look at it from that point of view. So in short, finance understand price, don't always understand that it's something that you can proactively work with, and that there are many different levers I should say, that a company can use to influence what their customers are willing to pay. Obviously, want to influence them to want to pay higher prices, or at some point, or in some cases, just sell more, basically. So pricing can have a huge influence and a huge impact on the financial operation of a company. The next group I want to talk about is marketing, right? And if you don't know, we have something called the 4 Ps of marketing. And the 4 Ps of marketing is place, meaning the marketplace. It's the product, that also includes services, of course. It's the promotions, the way you sell, the way you make your potential customers aware of that you exist. And then there's price. Now, that's the very basics, all right? But this leads to that marketing really have two different tasks. And again, I speak to a lot of marketeers, I speak to a lot of CMOs, VP of marketings, and I also speak to marketing managers and so forth. And there is, unfortunately, a bit of in many cases, a misunderstanding. And there's 2 Ps that marketing often forget, right? They forget the place. and they certainly forget the price. And what I mean with that is that marketing have two tasks. One is to really understand their marketplace, understand who are going to buy, why they're going to buy, how they want to learn about a product or a service, and how you can influence their buying decision. And finally, what price is the price that leads to the highest sales volume or the highest revenue? And of these 4 P's, they all affect each other. There is no set and forget for any of them. It could be, for example, that one marketing message would lead to much higher sales volume and revenue than another marketing message. It would influence what people are willing to pay in such a way that you can increase your prices with one message and not the others. It may be that one marketplace leads to a higher willingness to pay and therefore will support higher prices than another marketplace. Now, then you need to know the exact profiles of these, and you need to know exactly how that willingness to pay differs. It may be that certain product features or functions leads to different willingness to pay than other product features and functions. So marketing's task then is to make sure that in its promotions, whether that is advertising, whether it's signs, whether it's social media postings, whether it's videos, whatever it happen to be, that it is in those it's those product features or service features or benefits that leads to the highest willingness to pay and therefore supports the highest prices that they should use in their promotion. So this is very complex. It's not easy at all. And to take the simple case that let's just try a couple of different marketing messages and see what sticks, it's not good enough. If you're really lucky, it works. If you're like most companies, it sort of halfway works. And in a vast majority of companies, it doesn't work at all. They just keep testing and testing and testing, and never really get to the bottom of it. So pricing makes a huge difference for marketing, if nothing else, because it's one of the 4 P's of marketing, So that's very important. Then let's talk about how pricing is important for product management. Sometimes you don't have product managers because you're a service company, but the services are still being defined somewhere in the organization. And just like in marketing, for product management, it's incredibly important to understand what features, what functions, what benefits leads to a higher sales volume and higher revenues than other feature functions and benefits. Because of course you want to use these features and functions that leads to not only the highest sales volume but also the highest revenue. But obviously, as a product manager, you also need to look at the cost. So the cost is not spiraling out of control, and you need to find the best compromise, because it's always going to be a compromise. But if you don't know which of these features, functions, and benefit leads to the highest willingness to pay and therefore supports the highest possible prices, how can you? How can you know? Are you going to just guess? You're going to ask half a dozen potential customers of, who will probably lie, or at least not tell the whole truth. No, you need to find out willingness to pay, right? And how various features and functions affects willingness to pay and therefore affects how you can price. And finally, I want to talk about pricing and sales. Sales almost always have this perception that let's just lower prices because then we're going to sell a lot more. That happens sometimes. but not all the time. In fact, as we know it, price is the most powerful message of benefit of a product or a service. So if you underprice yourself, you will see a lower sales volume than if you price to match willingness to pay, right? So from a sales point of view, not only do you have to understand, and now I'm trying to make all this holistic, from a sales point of view, and at the end of the day, that's where the rubber meets the road. If you don't sell, who cares? And if and here we need to understand what customer profiles will lead to the highest sales volume and revenue, so that sales can focus on those. You need to understand how different features, functions, and benefits affects willingness to pay among the different customer profiles, so you can sell to the profile that will lead to the highest sales volume and the highest prices, right? Because that's going to lead to the highest revenue, right? You also need to know how customers want to see your pricing stratified. Is it going to be, by product size, by different different use cases? Is it going to be by different feature function bundles or whatever? What is the stratification that will minimize sales friction and that will maximize your revenue? Because that's what you want, right? At the end of the day, we all run companies because A, we want them to stay in business, and B, we want them to be as profitable as possible, right? So I'm saying here that pricing makes a difference for all groups in a company. From finance, who understands the bottom line and margins more than anybody else. For marketing, who need to understand price in such a way that they can market to the people and with the messages that are most effective in driving sales and revenue. To product managers, who need to understand what prices they can set and what features and functions that will drive the highest sales volume at the highest prices. And with sales, who obviously want to make sure that they're focusing on the right customer profile with the right pricing strategy, focusing on having the right messages and focusing on the right features and functions. Only then, and when you take this holistic view on how pricing reaches really every corner of your company, will your company go to the next level? Will you be the next market leader? And that's what you want, I guess. All right, thanks for me for now, and I'm looking forward to see you again in the next episode. Thank you much.